everybody, here's a new episode. I'm here with, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sharon Hill. I'm in the US in Pennsylvania, and I'm trained as a geologist, but I have a master's in science education as well. And I work in the environmental field, and I've been doing independent research on paranormal topics, spooky geology topics. Cryptozoology is my favorite, though.
Yeah, I've been in the cryptids for a long time now. There was a show on Disney Channel called So Weird. And it was kind of like a creature of the week episode kind of thing. And they talked about like ghosts, Bigfoot,
Yeah.
all that, and that really kind of piqued my interest for a long time. That kind of world. And the more I find podcasts that I listen to, the more it all seems kind of connect if you go down
Yeah.
certain rabbit holes. And I just
Yeah,
find it
that's
really
for sure.
interesting.
Yeah. So I think a lot changed when not only when you had cable TV and all those shows come out, and there were so many shows that came out that people could now be introduced to those topics, but then the internet was just like crazy. I mean, it just allowed people to just connect all over the world and share their ideas, and they all started to come together, I think, even more so, and reinforce what people believed,
Hmm.
and they came up with all new ideas. So there was so much going on because now we can talk to each other.
Yeah. Monster Quest was another one on History Channel that I really liked.
Huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
huge.
And
Um,
that influenced a lot of people, I
mhm.
think. They really loved it.
Yeah, because I think it introduced to people at least to folklore, at least to certain areas.
Yeah, and it showed that, like, there were people actively looking for these creatures. I think it was one of the first times when you actually saw people like Jeff Meldrum and other investigators taking the search seriously to find
Mhm.
out what were people seeing, or let's investigate these stories that people had. And you saw them doing it, and it was a good production.
Mhm.
It was really groundbreaking, I think.
Yeah, I'm interested in trying to save up or maybe do something. Go looking in my state. I'm in Arizona. We have a few monsters out this way.
Yeah.
Um, I think I saw how we got connected with Reddit. I think you said you wrote a few books on the subject.
I write for 40 and Times on occasion, and I have written in the past for a Skeptical Inquirer. I've contributed to a few books. I have a book of my own. It's called Scientifical Americans, and it's about the. It was part of my master's thesis where I looked at amateurs who were not scientists, but they say that they did science looking for ghosts, UFOs, and cryptids. So this is around 2010 or so. I started looking online and seeing all these groups that were online saying that we'll come and we'll investigate your claim, whatever it is.
Hmm.
And I looked and at what they said they did, and if they said what they did was science. And then I said, well, is it really science or is it something else? And what I found out was it wasn't science, because science is really hard and it takes a long time and it's really boring and it's got a lot of steps and you have to do a lot of things. But they were being like methodical in what they were doing. They were trying to collect data. They were trying to make sense of it. And if you go to somebody's house, say if you're a ghost investigator and they have a haunting in their house, and you go there and you set up equipment, and you look at the data and you look professional, that client says, "Oh, these people are doing science. It looks very sciency."
Hmm.
Unfortunately, most groups like that never did anything with their data. They never published it. They never shared it. They never subjected it to like peer review or something like that. So it wasn't science, but they knew that if they tried to do a good job, they would get a better result. And that, to me, that was the important message. Is in this country, in the U.S., we really admire science and scientists, and people want to be a part of that, but they can just get off their couch and go looking for paranormal things and pretend to do that. And it's sometimes a really important part of their life. and it's part of their identity. They love it so much, and they get so involved that it forms like a part of their way of living. And
Hmm.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, one of the podcasts I listen to is the cryptid huntress, and she likes to go out and look at these things in the wild, just for fun, just
Yeah.
collecting data. But yeah, I wonder how many in the past couple decades, how many frauds kind of came up trying to do that, like, oh, we'll solve your ghost problem and whatnot. Um,
Well, yeah, and then they'll find a demon under your bed or something, and
mhm.
that's not good.
I've heard that with the ones that there's an air of maybe con artistry with them.
I totally agree with that. I think that they made up a lot of stories. They exaggerated a lot in order to make money. And, they had a really deep religious belief. And I think that in many cases, they made up a story that wasn't even there, and just to try to sell books and to push their religious belief, their very strong Catholic belief. And then everything was demons at that point.
Yeah, I think what was it, The Conjuring 2? They were only there for like a day in real
Oh,
life.
right.
And they made a whole movie
Yeah.
about it.
Right. Yeah. But that made so much money for them. Well, I mean, Ed is dead. Lorraine just passed a couple years ago, but the
Hmm.
estate made a lot of money off of selling their
Yeah.
stories.
I think they relocated, but I think that's kind of like a trip, a good trip idea to go see that museum if they get it up and running again.
Yeah, I don't know if it's open anymore, but I know that they probably handed it off to, I don't know,
I thought it was the
their
daughter and the
relative.
husband
Yeah.
was in charge, and they were
Right.
moving.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right.
but on that topic, what do you think ghosts are?
That's a really loaded question. Ghosts can be so many things, and I think we assume that they're the spirits of dead people, but they could be some sort of projections. They could be, telepathy. They could be energy. I mean, it's just I don't believe that ghosts are a thing that people that you can put in a box and describe. I think that they are human experiences, and they may be different for each person. That people say that they're related to a place, that they're the whole stone tape idea, which caught on, where it relates back to making a place really specific to that haunting. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, to me, ghosts are human experiences that people have that, they're so powerful in some cases, they could change your life. And I don't discount that. I don't believe in ghosts. I've never had a ghost experience that I know of, but I don't discount people having really powerful experiences that can change their lives.
Yeah, there's I think a lot of avenues you can go down. I think I've heard people talk about like some poltergeist activity could be like negative charged human emotions. Typically, teenage girls around puberty
Sure.
can manifest things. I think it could be the land with like ley line and stuff like that. And the way time and space kind of like folds. You could
Mhm.
have two people from different time periods colliding for a second, and each one thinks it's a ghost. And they
Yeah.
say like energy, it can't be destroyed, so where did our consciousness go? If not to an afterlife of sorts, if they stay here and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of assumptions in
Hmm.
that, a lot of things that we're assuming are happening. Um, Poltergeist is really freaky to me because I find the case is so fascinating and convincing. But what the heck is going on? I
Yeah,
mean,
because
you
those
just,
are the ones
it's,
you can catch stuff moving, and
yeah,
sometimes they're more
it's
violent.
crazy. I think they're very different from ghosts. I mean, I would definitely make a distinction between haunting and ghosts versus poltergeist cases because they behave very differently. They're usually limited in time, like you said. They're often centered around one person, usually a young person. And I just just been so many great stories that that's fascinating, and it's a real mystery. I just
Hmm.
wonder why we don't have as many today. We don't have as many poltergeist cases these days as seems like there
Maybe
used to
less
be.
old houses, people moving around, maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
Um, some people say if you coming from like a religious angle, maybe we're less connected to that side, so
Could
less
be.
experiences.
Right, right. I just know that atheists don't have a lot of paranormal experiences.
Yeah, there was one episode of the Confessionals. He's another guy, and he was in Pennsylvania. He's in Tennessee now, I think. He moved. He looks in Dogman and Bigfoot stuff. He had an early episode when he talked to a guy who claims he was a high wizard for the Satanic Church,
Mm,
and that was something he said that you know who sold their soul if you can go to their concert, say the phrase and get free tickets. I think it was AC/DC. He said he always had to pay because they were AC. It's you can't sell what you don't believe exists.
that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole Satanist thing is quite trumped up. I don't think
Yeah, I think it's a
that's
mixed bag. I think there's some pretenders, some people trying to
yeah.
be edge lords, but there's that small like 1, 2% that's real.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you consider it a religion, why not? And you that's what you believe and that's what you want to practice, then it's
Hmm.
real.
Yeah, I read the Anti-Levaine's book, and it's a lot of it. It's just kind of I think he puts it controlled selfishism. Well, you just put yourself first, put your
Right.
own
Yeah, do what
needs.
thou wilt, the whole Crowley thing too. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a choice if you want to live that way for sure.
Yeah, some people just like to, kind of party hard and live that kind of lifestyle, and that's an avenue for them. And then you have the true, like I said, the true believers, that 1%.
Right. That's true. Yep.
And then moving on to, you said you did some research. What kind of research did you do generally?
Um, I don't go out and to people's houses. I don't go out in the woods and look for animals or anything. I'm basically looking at why people believe what they believe, and right now I'm really interested in cryptids as an aspect of popular culture. Like how are we looking at cryptids in the wider culture? Like we talked about TV shows and the internet and podcasts and stuff like that has a huge influence on how people perceive these things and what they think about them. And like I said, I have a geology background, so I do a lot of digging into popular spooky geology topics. That being the stone tape ley lines that was mentioned. I have a whole collection of things that I've looked into, rocks that look like faces, and earthquake lights. I did a whole lot of research on earthquake lights. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Earth lights and earthquake lights, which are kind of different,
Yeah,
even to
they're
the
like
point when
orbs that appear before earthquakes or something.
they could be all sorts of things. They could be big curtains of lights, kind of like auroras, or they could be fireballs or glows on the ground or orbs. There was a huge array of those things. So I was super interested in earthquake precursors. So I did. I researched that everything I could find in the technical literature for years. And I actually spoke at the NASA Goddard Center for a lunch symposium because people wanted to know the astrophysicists at NASA wanted to know what are earthquake lights all about. So I did a presentation there, and that's on YouTube, so you can see that. But and it got really well. It was really well received, simply because we don't know yet if those earthquake lights exist. We have a lot of things that are not earthquake lights, but people say they are, and you can't catch this because you don't know when an earthquake's going to happen. People don't have cameras in wide open spaces all the time. So it was really a fascinating subject. So I did a lot of research on that, and I published some stuff in journals of parapsychology a couple of years ago with another group of people talking about the way ghosts are perceived in society. So, but right now I kind of just I do my blog. I do what interests me,
Hmm.
and I go whichever way I feel like going.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to start trying to research a little bit more on some of these things. Like I said, I'll go out. I have an interest in going out and trying to find some evidence or something myself. And kind of grow the channel. Maybe do some documentaries.
Hmm.
Um, one big cryptid that's always fascinating me was Bigfoot. Have you had any Bigfoot stories come your way?
Um, so being in Pennsylvania, we have quite an active Bigfoot community. It's mostly in the western part of the state. Pennsylvania is a very weird state because the western part is mountain. It's mountainous, but it's there's still many remote places, whereas the eastern part of the state is quite a lot of larger cities. But it's mountainous all the way across. There's quite big swaths of forests where nobody lives. And even from the 70s, Pennsylvania, it wasn't well known. Bigfoot when it first came out was like, oh, it's in the Pacific Northwest. It's in,
Yeah,
British
they're just
Columbia and
one of them.
Washington. Yeah, and there was just one idea of Bigfoot. And then soon after, not that long after, there were these different types of Bigfoot that would pop up all across the US at least, and Canada. The skunk ape and the different monsters in the South and in various places. So we had a lot of Bigfoot sightings in Pennsylvania, and it just strikes me. It's sometimes I find these, and I know that place where they described they saw a wild man or Bigfoot back in the day, and it's freaky to go there and think that people had that experience at that place. And I'll be out in the woods and I'll be hiking, and I'm like, oh, this is a good spot. But no, I've never seen anything that was really credible. Several years, like probably about 10 years ago or more, there was a viral story about seeing a Bigfoot, and it looked like it was around a tree I forget what it was called. But it was people said that these were Bigfoot, but they ended up being very kind of skinny and light-haired bears, but you never got the face in these
Hmm.
these videos or these images. You just kind of only got the back of it. And when a bear doesn't have a lot of fur, it looks really weird. And they made a big deal out of it of being Bigfoot, and it was bears. And we've got bears everywhere here. They're all over the place. And I just think people are seeing a lot of bears. What's currently happening in the Pennsylvania scene, though, especially in the western part around Chestnut Ridge, if you've heard of that, a lot of UFO activity, many more Bigfoot sightings, and they're associated with weird lights. So the whole weird lights and Bigfoot thing is coming back again. And people are saying that when they've seen a creature, it's been associated with weird lights as well.
Hmm.
Ground level lights, not necessarily UFOs up in the sky, but ground level orbs, more like the Earth lights phenomenon. So I'm seeing that come out right now. It's kind of a big deal, and I know Small Town Monsters is just doing programming that is kind of lending into that idea that lights and cryptids are now kind of related. And so, like you said in the beginning, it looks like everything's related.
Hmm.
Things are now starting to merge together, and you see these themes coming out, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of the podcasts I listen to that go down that rabbit hole with all these things and trying to explain like what they call like the woo-woo aspect.
Right.
And some people see them around like portals and stuff. So one theory is coming from the biblical perspective. You have like Genesis, the Watchers came down, mated
Right.
with man and beasts, and maybe that's how you got some of these cryptids, these hybrid things. And because they have that kind of angelic origin, they can do certain things um that we run out aware of, like maybe interdimensional travel, disappearing, kind of blending in, and the orbs. Also, there's the theory that what if they're also not related, but they're interdimensional beings coming here, and that's just what our minds are making, or they're taking that shape on purpose. Because who's gonna
Yeah.
believe you?
Right. So there's a couple things there. I think it's interesting that there's so much interest in really, the woo woo meaning not
Kind
not
of
scientific,
supernatural,
something, yeah,
yeah,
supernatural type
paranormal.
ideas. So this is really becoming a big thing because it's fun to imagine all these ideas, and you want to call them theories that people have about how these things could work, because I think
Yeah, I guess
when I was
theory might
doing
be a strong word. The
it
more
is strong, right, right.
hypothesis or
But
thoughts.
yeah, that's okay. I mean, we use it in a general sense. That's okay. I'm not going to be pedantic about that, but
Yeah.
people want to say theory. But when what I noticed was, back in the 70s or 80s, and there's always these gatekeeping, let's just go with cryptozoologists who are like cryptids are real animals we haven't identified yet. Flesh and blood, pelts and paws. But yet when the science, when they tried to find them, when they looked for scat or, bodies,
Hmm.
they couldn't find it. But yet they still had people saying they saw them. So science kind of failed us in finding those creatures. So maybe they're not scientific, maybe they're not natural, maybe they're supernatural. And in order to sustain your belief in those things, you have to move outwards and get into the more fringe ideas.
Yeah.
So that's when the things started to come in that they're Nephilim type hybrids and the portals and the more supernatural ideas or paranormal ideas started to come into play because people still wanted to believe, but science wasn't giving us the results. So
Hmm.
they sustained it in a different way. I call that the supernatural creep when people's belief just keeps going to wilder and wilder places because they just want to believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there also could just be big apes out there too. Not all of them have to be the supernatural aspect of it. But yeah, I look to like people who try to go find like chimpanzees and gorillas in the wild. Like it's extremely hard. The only times they find them is when they want them to be found.
True. Yeah.
To me, it's not that far-fetched to say, oh, it's hard to find them or we would never find any bodies because the U.S. is pretty large. You have to be in that exact spot at the right time.
Well, when you're looking at a problem, you're trying to solve a problem of Bigfoot, say, people are seeing these things, but we can't find them. Why is that? Um, there's so many different ways that we could explain that. One is just cultural. People, if you want to just be very straightforward, they're not really seeing those things; they're seeing something else. But if you're going to propose that it's a real animal, there are several lines of evidence that should converge on a real animal. You need to find what it eats and where it can live and how it can sustain itself, how it can reproduce. Does it have enough food, shelter, and mates? We have to look at the evolutionary history, the fossil history. How would those things have gotten into the Americas? We have a limited way of getting them into America. We don't have any fossil evidence of apes here, so there's a lot of things that come into play. And I think that maybe people who are new to the subject aren't considering that we don't have the fossil evidence in the U.S. and we don't have the ecology working for us. So there's a lot of things that sort of blend itself to say this is not a big ape. This is just not something that can sustain itself in the U.S., even though there are places where people can hide and never be found.
Hmm.
What interests me, and I think what the killer thing on Bigfoot is, we see them everywhere. People say they see them everywhere, like all continental U.S. states, right? I mean, I know they see them in Alaska, but I don't know if they really see them in Hawaii. There's some claims with that.
Yeah, I don't know, they're kind of folklore and whatnot.
Yeah, it's kind of folklore thing. But so we see them everywhere, but yet we can't find them anywhere. And I just think that that's telling us that something is amiss here. Either they don't exist, and we're looking at a very culturally important phenomenon for sure, or it's supernatural. Not, I mean, I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't believe
Hmm.
it's supernatural, but you know what? I don't know. Something can happen in the future that we haven't imagined. So
Yeah,
that's my
going back
take
to
on
like
it.
the Nephilim idea, they say that could explain why it's hard to get them on camera because they mess with it or the energies or whatever kind of mess with the digital cameras. That's why film was always better to
Yeah,
capture
well,
them.
that's a convenient explanation, but
Maybe,
I'm
yeah.
not sure. It's answering a mystery with another mystery. It doesn't really get us anywhere.
Hmm. But I think kind of like Ghost too. You never know what the device you have is actually doing what you think it's doing
Right. That's definitely
because you
true.
don't know
People
if
are,
those things work.
yeah, they're using them in the wrong way. And I think people are different. if we consider a person as an instrument, I can hear and see things differently than maybe another person can. So, based on our own, our own physiology, some people can be sensitive to sound or sensitive to taste or could smell things better than other people or hear things better than other people. Um, I don't know how we measure that. We're not measuring a big population. What do you think blue looks like? Like what
Hmm.
you don't really know what that means because we're all just a little bit different. So maybe people really are sensitive to some things while other people are not. We just don't know that yet.
Yeah. I heard that blue is actually kind of like a new color for humans to see. It's just kind of like a weird concept that we didn't know what blue was for a long time.
It's it's not found a lot in animals, for
Hmm.
one. Like there's not too many blue animals. There's just a couple, but it's my favorite color. Can you tell?
So yeah, that's what got me thinking when you said blue. I was looking at it.
Yeah.
That's why there was one podcast that was kind of making a joke about it, but it's like if you color yourself in a blue fabric, could you just walk past people because they couldn't register you with their eyes what that was in front of them?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Maybe we just don't have a name for it, but I mean the sky is blue. We've always been able to see the sky at least.
Hmm. Yeah, in
Uh,
paintings they do sky and oceans, but they don't always be blue because it is a
right.
hard color to make too.
That's true. Yeah, skies and oceans aren't always blue.
And then another cryptid, well, I don't know if I would call it cryptid, but werewolves were always something that fascinate me. And then now you have the dogman aspect.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about them?
So this is a really interesting topic because the whole idea, I don't know, let's just call them like, can we call them something else like canid humanoids or something? Because you're looking at a whole pile of things. You're looking at dogmen, you're looking at werewolves, you're looking at strange canid shaped animals that sometimes are confused with Bigfoot. So it's really tough to look at them all, but they weren't really a thing prior to like the early or the late 90s when say like Linda Godfrey was collecting these stories and she made them popular and then they became huge. And I think that the television and the internet aspect was a big deal there, where it spread this idea. And then we had the connect. I mean, we always had what the Rougarou came from the Loup Garou,
Mhm.
came over to the U.S. in the Cajun, culture, and also the French Canadian. And that always confused me because you would see the Rougarou mentioned as both part of the French Canadian culture and the Louisiana area culture. And
Hmm.
there was this big gap in between, but it was the French connection there,
Yeah.
I think, of the culture, bringing that idea. And so then the Rougarou became more like, was it a shapeshifter? Was it a skinwalker? Was it a Bigfoot type? Was it really a canid walking upright? Was it a werewolf? So there was a whole lot of things that it can be. And I think it's interesting where you can watch current depictions of this canid humanoid, and it's aggressive, it's kind of occultish, it's magical, it's digging up at graveyards and Indian burial mounds and things like that. So it's got this occult flavor to it, and I think it's really interesting to contrast that with the Bigfoot, which seems less so, seems more animal than the Rougarou is animalistic, but also more magical. Do you know what I mean? I mean, what do you see as the Rougarou dogman type
Well, I've heard
thing
the
happening?
Rougarou be, I forget where I heard it, but someone said it was kind of like the French Skinwalker
Oh,
in a
okay.
way. But yeah, the lore of werewolves go deep. It goes to like Celtic, Greek, Roman times. I think that's where we get lycanthrope. There's
Mm-hmm.
the legend of the king that tried to feed Zeus human, and he got turned
Right.
into a wolfman hybrid. But some of the podcasts, people who actually look into the lore and do these things, they make a distinction that the werewolves and dogmen are different.
Okay.
Werewolves are kind of more magical. There's a process to be turned into, while the dogmen could be just generic chimeras or hybrids to, scientific means or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
also going back to the Nephilim If you can have,
Mm,
like a Watcher with a ape make a Bigfoot, would a Watcher and a wolf or something make some kind of like werewolf dogman
wow.
aspect
Yeah.
thing? And in the Bible, you have the cynocephali, which are humanoid people with no fur but a dog head, which
Right.
is a weird concept. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm. What were you gonna
there's
say?
a new book. There's a new book coming out on Anubis,
Oh
the
yeah, yeah,
Egyptian
Anubis. There's a lot of
dog-headed
god-headed
god. Yeah.
gods too, and um, but yeah, some of them they go deep into conspiracy. That like the government uses them to keep people out of certain areas like national parks because whole
Mm,
big secret bases.
mm,
There's the law of them protecting certain like Indian mounds or burial grounds that leads to like the aspects of them being some kind of like spiritual guardians in a way.
right.
And then you have the skinwalkers, that shapeshifter type. Like I said, everything's connected. I'm not super religious myself. I think there is I think it's agnostic. There is a God, but I don't subscribe to one religion.
Sure.
So that's why I think a lot of it can come back to like the Watchers things, creating things that we just don't understand because it's a higher plane. But yeah, there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down. I'd love to see
What
one.
what why do you think that the whole dogman phenomenon just kind of appeared within the last 20, 25 years?
Some people are saying that goes down to the hybrid programs the government is doing. Um, it really kind of ramped up, and like I said, they were using them to keep people out. Um, Kind of makes sense, but then they go into like the good aspect of some of them disobeyed, never came back, went
Mm,
rogue, and those could be the more aggressive type you see because they're not natural. Some people say the werewolves are the more gentle ones. They won't attack you unless you attack them, kind of thing. Um, but yeah, because I haven't seen one or done anything, so I don't know if we'll ever really truly know unless the government says, yeah, we've done some of them.
yeah, that I mean, it's not physically possible to make a dog man. Um, this is not going to work
Hmm.
genetically. And I know that Linda would go on podcasts and she would espouse the potential idea that dogs have evolved to be bipedal. And that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You just can't get enough time going by within the time frame that we're talking about. But so again, the question is to me is Dogman seems to be very cultural. The more we talk about it, the more we see it. But yet, is that a real phenomenon or is it just cultural contagion that people see what they want to believe? So it's hard to make that distinction between what's going on with Dogman. But I thought it was really interesting because it's so popular right now. I mean, it's
Hmm.
just such a popular creature, almost to the point where it's more popular than Bigfoot
Yeah,
because
I was
it's
just
a lot of
thinking that it
fun.
kind of overshadowed Bigfoot in the last few years.
So the idea of like, so I've been watching some of the documentaries about, Land Between the Lakes,
That's
where
a
you're
place I would
getting
love to go visit and kind of do
Dog
something.
Man and Bigfoot in the same area, and that's just crazy. What a crazy idea. And I don't know. I mean, there's a lot going on in that area. There's a lot of cultural trauma that took
Yeah, the
place there.
Appalachians in the
Yeah.
general is a very spooky kind of old place.
Yeah, and that's super popular now too, where people are looking to find meaning in where they live. So Appalachia has become super spooky. Now I've always lived in Pennsylvania is part of Appalachia or Appalachia. We've always called it Appalachia. There's a
Yeah,
um,
that debate going
yeah,
on.
the debate going on. So it depends on where you are on the Mason-Dixon line. If you're north of Maryland, you call it Appalachia. If you're south, you tend to call it Appalachia. So as a geologist, I've studied the whole mountain system, and it's all these little parts in this one big mountain chain. So there's the Ozarks, and there's the Poconos, and there's these the Smokies, and so they all have their own little niche, and people have suddenly become super proud of being from Appalachia. And I think that's really cool because
Hmm.
they're finding meaning in the history of the land. But along with that, now it's all spooky. And the thing is that you can package culture to sell. So, and I give Point Pleasant props for this because they certainly did this. They packaged their lore, their trauma, their folklore, their monster, and it's just gone international. It's huge, the Mothman.
Hmm.
So it was something that's really a case study of how to market your local culture into something that makes your town proud. I thought that was really that's I think that's super interesting. Cryptid festivals in particular, to roll
Yeah.
this back into cryptids. There's a big resurgence in making a festival in your town to celebrate your monster. And there's so many of them now. There's more every year. I can barely keep up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good tourist kind of revenue generator. But I was thinking that too. I've gone through Roswell, New Mexico, and that's another place like that. Aliens all over the
Yeah,
place.
yeah,
It's kind of built in.
yeah.
And I think that's a whole nother interesting thing too. You brought up Crowley and was it Lamb, who kind of looked like a gray, and then you had Roswell the same year he died. That's another
Mm,
occult aspect. But also the thought I ha had was kind of like the biology of the dogman. That they say that's one way you can tell the difference if it has the legs of a canine. That's more like the natural type. But
hmm
the ones that have more like human feet, Bigfoot type, they're more of the hybrids.
hmm.
And there's a whole debate about whether or not they have tails or not. Some people
Oh,
don't
yeah,
remember seeing a tail, but in that moment, how much detail other than like the face was staring at you.
yeah. I mean,
And
the whole if you're looking at a mangy bear, those things look bizarre. They don't have a tail.
yeah,
They've got really
yeah, I
weird
think I've seen a picture of
features.
a bear
Yeah,
with mange, and yeah, it kind of looks wolfish
yeah,
in a
really weird
sense.
looking. That most certainly accounts for at least a few
Hmm. Yeah, and
weird.
one of the thoughts going back to Bigfoot a bit was that yeah, a lot of I would admit a lot of experiences could be chopped up to bears, but also how many people experience something um that they think is a bear that could be Bigfoot and they just chop it up because they're not aware or and I think that's another thing. People are influenced by what they hear, so they could see a bear and then they exaggerate. But also, what was it? There was a song about the Michelin Dog Man that got a
Right.
lot of people talking about it. That was a huge thing. So there are a lot of old stories. I think it's just coming forth because a lot of people are talking about it. And once you hear it, there's a part of your mind that's open to seeing it. So maybe you do see it more because you're aware of it now. And then also
Yeah,
it feeds into like that paranoia of, oh, I heard something. Maybe it could have been a Bigfoot, but it could have just been some
totally.
animal.
Totally. But how would we know?
Yeah.
Because your memory is just so good, and then every time you remember something, you're reconstructing it,
Yeah, it
and it gets a little
changes.
different. Yeah. And I've thought about that too. Lots of people ask me, "Have you ever had a paranormal experience?" And I have to say no because I might never admit it unless it was really, really dramatic, because I'm always thinking, oh, I probably saw something else. Or my mind is going through all the potential explanations, normal
Hmm.
explanations. And I don't think I'll ever be able to convince myself that I saw something paranormal because I've never been able to eliminate all the normal. You can't possibly eliminate all the normal things because you just don't know. So that's kind of my problem with people saying it's paranormal. Well, you can't say it's paranormal. You can't come right out and say this was a paranormal experience because you can't possibly have eliminated all the potential normal explanations.
Hmm.
It's very difficult to do. So, yeah, I do get a little testy about that, but at a certain point, people want to believe what they want to believe, and that's fine as long as it doesn't hurt me. I don't care.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a part of me that is a bit of a true believer, but also I am a skeptic. I don't want to be too naive and believe everything, but it's like
Good.
show me the evidence if you have any. my last guest, he told me a story that he went up the stairs to go into a room, and when he opened it, it wasn't like air rushing past that could be anything. He felt like weight on his shoulders, like somebody grabbed him. And I would think that would be hard to explain, the weight coming down, not just something going past.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's a lot of
spooky.
physical things that might happen. We just don't
Hmm.
know. Again, like I said, people are different, and we can't recreate that. We can't test it. So it's just an experience,
Hmm.
and there's not much else we could do with that but say, hey, that was a cool experience. You're lucky to have that that neat experience.
Yeah. And then another thing that's all cryptid that kind of always fascinated me was like sea monsters and stuff. Um, do you believe they're out there?
I It's really interesting, like the whole sea serpent argument back in the 17th, 18th century, when you had well-known naturalists at the time saying that sea serpents were real. And why not? Because we didn't know what was in the ocean at that time. We had no means to do any sort of deep investigation. All they knew was what the fishermen brought up in their nets, what washed up on shore, and well, what looked like washed up on shore, because you'd get these carcasses washing up on shore. They didn't know what they were.
Yeah, I think
Couldn't test. They couldn't test
was
them,
it
right?
lobsters? It's
Lobsters,
just these
yeah,
big masses of fat and like flesh.
yeah. And you don't. They didn't know. And they had a lot of professional sailors saying we saw something weird. So the literature on sea serpents is really interesting and cool. I thought that was fascinating. I really like that stuff. However, it's 200 years later. We don't really have sea serpents. We certainly don't have one thing that we can say was definitively that was what people called a sea serpent, like the oarfish or, some kind of seal or whatever. Sure, people saw those things, but just like if you talk about Loch Ness, the people who say they see a monster, they aren't all seeing one thing. They're seeing a lot of different things. Some people are definitely seeing waves. Some people are definitely seeing birds and fish. Maybe there's something else, there's something came into the lock like a giant eel or something like that. I don't know. It could have been a lot of things. So I don't really like when we say that there's like one thing that Nessie is or one thing that Champ is. And I was just at Lake Champlain earlier this year, and I'm looking at all the time, looking for something that looks like a monster because I want to see it too. So I think it's a lot of different things that people are seeing in the water because you can't see under the water, and we just don't know what's under there. So that's like it's a whole other thing about water creatures. There's so
Yeah,
much
I
going
feel
on
like I
there.
could handle space. I don't know if I could handle the deep sea.
There's a lot of weird things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the water does scare me too.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
like we know, colossal and giant squids exist. People talk about maybe octopus could get rather large too.
sure. Yeah.
So some things are explainable. I kind of think maybe Megalodon could be out there, but who knows? I think some things could have survived, but I don't know.
Yeah, that to me, that's a big no. We've
You
got
think
too
so? Because
much
some
time.
say they tasted
No,
teeth and they've lived longer than what they
no.
think they have in a
So
few thousand
sharks,
years.
yeah, sharks lose their teeth a lot.
Hmm.
Megalodon was a near shore predator because it got seals and stuff like that. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing those types of signs. The teeth that have been found are well datable. They can date them, and they're several million years old. So we really just don't have any evidence that megalodon is still out there. But people could definitely be seeing something else
Because yeah,
that,
great whites get rather large
yeah,
regardless.
yeah, whale sharks that they just see a little bit of it, or
Yeah, and
basking sharks. Yeah.
you made a point. Yeah, there was one podcast somebody was talking about Loch Ness, and they think it's a giant eel. That could explain some other serpent type things, giant eels. There was one cryptid story I heard from Antarctica called Organism 46. Have you heard of that?
The ones that start being named with numbers, I lose track of.
Oh, well, because some people don't know if it's real or not,
Yeah,
or if it's like some kind of like internet creepypasta, because
right.
it comes from like a Russian base that they encounter this hyper intelligent octopus-like creature. And it's a really interesting story.
Mhm.
And it's like I don't know what could survive, what from the past. Um, I think there's a lot to our reality that we don't understand that it could be kind of like layered.
Could
That's why
be.
coming to like the portal things, maybe some things could move through time accidentally because it's a natural phenomenon
That
that
would
could
be a
explain
great,
certain things, why
yeah,
people
it'd be
see
a great
dinosaurs out of
explanation.
time.
Yeah. If that were true, that would explain a lot of things.
Hmm.
But if it were true, I think that we'd see more of it. I don't know. I mean, if there really were time slips or portals, I think we would see more evidence of it. And instead we're just seeing enough for some people to believe and other people to say, "Oh no, that's not true." I just wish there was more that we could go by, and it's not just a few people in a few places saying that they've seen these things. If you say you see this thing or it shows up regularly in this area, like say Skinwalker Ranch or other portal areas where people are saying these things happen all the time,
We have the
why can't we
Stardust
see it?
Ranch by Buckeye Phoenix. It's kind of like similar to Skywalker, not Skywalker, Skinwalker.
Skinwalker, yeah.
Yeah, with like aliens, portals, big animals.
I just don't know. I mean, are people just making up these stories or is there really something there? If there was really something there, why can't we find it? Why can't we see it? Why can't we measure it? So that's kind of where I get hung up on things.
Hmm.
I'm more apt to believe that people are making fun stories
Yeah,
than
I
that
think
they're
there's a lot
really.
of people that do latch on um, to general sightings. You don't know how many stories out there could potentially be there to throw you off from like the true research, true things, the truth, I guess. But yeah, I like to think we live in a much realer place than we're led to believe. There's a lot more mystery, I think.
Sure. And there
And
definitely is, yeah.
the I almost forgot the thought I had. That's something people bring up is that if there is some kind of, connection, how long does it last? Are you only seeing it for just that little bit of time? That's why we can't find it because it went
Mm,
back. Or can they stay? Maybe that's another explanation for like the Bigfoot dogmen. They come from different places and they get trapped here, stuck here.
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a convenient explanation for the weird things that people are saying that are happening.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have any scientific evidence for it, but if it were true, it would explain a lot of things.
Yeah. And just to kind of pan out the time, you brought up NASA. What do you think about all those like space conspiracies, like flat Earth or not going to the moon?
Oh, I don't. It's just garbage. But so I've been part of the skeptical community for a long time. I don't identify with that community anymore, and they would always just say, "Oh, those people are stupid. They don't have enough education. They didn't learn this stuff in school." Yes, they did. Everybody learned in school that the Earth was round, that this space is, there's planets and we orbit the sun, all that stuff. That there's no aliens. So they learned that, but they've rejected those ideas because, in my mind, they're not happy with society right now. They don't trust authority. They don't trust the government. They're not pleased with their situation and how the world and society is arranged. It's unfair. It's people are lying to us. People are hiding things from us. And I think that feeds into these conspiracy ideas where people want to have some sort of control. They want to feel like they know something for sure because we can't know things for sure. And we do know that the government has to keep stuff from us and the military has to lie to us in some aspects. And scientists don't get things right and scientists do cheat sometimes and things like that. We're people. We do these things. So to me, it feels like the flat Earth and the moon hoax conspiracy is based on that lack of trust and that we just don't like authority anymore. We're anti-authority. We just want to be our own boss. We want to figure things out for ourselves. And if the reasoning makes sense to us, then it feels comforting because I can't trust what somebody else is telling
Mhm.
me. That's how I view conspiracy. I don't blame people for feeling that way. I don't think they're correct, and I think it can be dangerous. But I can understand why they want to believe those things.
Yeah, I think last few years definitely a lot of mistrust with the government with all the political stuff going on since like 2020 and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I think going down certain rabbit holes are dangerous because then you can get led to believe something because you're half paying attention and like, oh, that kind of makes sense, I guess. Um, and a lot of it is just regurgitated talking points. But I bring it up because they had that Antarctica trip recently. So flat
Hmm.
Earth got debunked, and a lot of people are still trying to make it work. You
Yeah.
know, see, it's CGI, it's this or it's that. The shadows don't line up.
Yeah, I've been
I
following
think that's
that.
something too
Yeah.
perspective. They can't um view something differently. Like they get caught up, oh, but the stars don't move. It's like, well, people in Australia see different constellations. It's not the same ones, and that's something they can't wrap their minds around. For me, when it comes to the moon, I definitely think we went. I just don't think they said everything. Going into the conspiracies of like moon bases and whatnot, I think they
Mm.
definitely could be hiding stuff. Was it, I think Alex Jones says it could be a graveyard of astronauts out there of all the failed times. We
I don't
went and couldn't get
consider,
them back.
yeah. I
Um,
don't listen to anything he says. I
I just
think
I
he's human
somebody brought that
garbage.
pawn up.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, I guess there was that story of somebody picking up a radio from cosmonauts that meant a gruesome end in space, and Russia denied it. Again,
Right.
I don't know if it's true or not. But I
Well,
definitely think there could be some mishaps in space that they don't want to admit to.
absolutely. Yeah. And you got to be
And that adds to the
understanding that,
conspiracy because they cover up so they don't look bad.
right. You got to remember that the stuff that you see on the news is definitely only half the story at most.
Hmm.
There's so much left that is either wrong or left out. We just don't get the whole story when for what you see in the media.
Yeah, there was one podcast I listened to about JK that was saying Oswald definitely hit him more or less like in the neck. That would have been the kill shot in itself, but that the one that um got him in the head could have came from the one of the Secret Service, and that adds to the conspiracy why they covered it up because
Yeah.
they don't want to look bad. He could have suffered from his injuries and passed regardless, but taking off the his head was the Secret Service. It's like I don't know. It makes
Yeah.
sense if you look at
And
the different bullet types, but we'll never know.
right, because we've only got this limited amount of information. And how much more can you look at it? Or how many
The
different ways
same
can you look at it?
videotape with different angles. Yeah.
And that's the same thing that happens with the Patterson Gimlin film is people are trying to keep trying to deconstruct it or enhance it. And it's like, no, it's just a finite amount of information. We can't do anything else with it. We've
Hmm.
we've looked at it to death. I'm not sure what else we could
Yeah,
squeeze out
that
of
one
it.
it definitely looks like when the back is facing you, you can't see the muscle kind of move when it bends its leg. But I don't know too much about um, you know, these prosthetics to say that's real or not.
Yeah. So can I ask you some questions? Like what are some books that you like that you find interesting or important on cryptids?
Sorry, I think I unplugged my computer. Um, Books, not so much. There's a few people I want to read books and talk to about their experiences, but right now it's mostly podcasts. Um,
Mm,
there's one called the One on One with Wana Allah. He dives into more like occult stuff. Like John D. Crowley we brought up earlier, that kind of angle. The confessionals is somebody who sits down with people and talks to about their experiences. He's trying to get out. Like I said, he's in Tennessee. He wants to go to the LBL. and just Appalachia in general, looking for any evidence. He says he has a few experiences of hearing things and having something like rush at them, but never he's never put eyes on anything physical.
Hmm.
Um, and then like I said, there was the cryptid huntress, Jessica, I forget her last name. She's in Georgia, I think. That's also going out there with groups of people doing research. They say they have a video of people going into this meadow and they just disappear from the cameras.
Any video evidence, I don't know how much it's worth because it's so editable. How can you
They
trust
they
that?
say that those guys have since passed, so they think maybe radiation got shown from the portal. But yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think some could be faked. They've never released it.
Mm,
Um, so I don't know if that how that falls on you, those listening. But I'd love to see it.
mm,
They're walking and then they just disappear. I want to see it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, so books are not a thing anymore. It feels like people are looking more
I'm
at
I'm trying to
videos and
collect a good amount of a library to do my own reading and stuff. It's just
uh-huh.
money and finding the time
Right,
to actually
right.
open
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, books have references and you can check things, whereas podcasts are kind of ephemeral. They're just like anybody could say anything and you
There's
can't really
another one
check
that
it.
I think it's a Chill Illuminati one. They actually go and do a lot of deep dive research. They read books, cite
Mm,
things like I mentioned the JFK. That's where I got that information from. So there's some that I do listen to that come from kind of like the true believer and then this skeptic side where it's like these are the facts. This is what people believe. This is why I believe,
mhm.
and it
Are
leaves it
you,
up to you.
do you look at TikTok at all or Instagram videos and stuff like that?
Only really from those that I follow.
Okay.
Every now and then I might see something on Facebook or Instagram that's like, oh, X, Twitter. That might be like, oh, here's this spooky clip. Um, what are your thoughts? Some of them look believable, but I try not to
Yeah.
believe everything online.
Yeah, I would go on TikTok and just look for cryptid stuff that's come out, and oh my gosh, it's so much AI.
Hmm.
It's junk that's on there, and it's not even fun anymore because it's so much garbage. It's just like, oh, this is totally fake, but yet they're putting it out there as new cryptid, and
Yeah, for
I don't
the,
know.
was it the engagement farming?
Yeah, yeah, and it makes it hard to find good stuff when you got to wade through all that bad stuff.
I remember when YouTube was early, I would do that, come home from school and just search stuff and be like, oh, that looks interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if it was popular enough, usually there might be like a video debunking it or trying to at least.
Yeah, yeah, I like those. I like that. See, I like, when I was growing up and I would read all the stories about cryptids, and it was like unsatisfying because I didn't know if it was true. It's
Hmm.
like I wanted to know, is this really true? So when I looked at the skeptical literature where it was people actually debunking stuff and doing a really good job, that to me, that was more satisfying because they were actually like digging into it more. And I found that the stories just didn't do it for me anymore. It's like, oh, another story. But I know a lot of people are influenced by that. They like to hear the stories. That's what they enjoy.
Hmm. Yeah, I like hearing the encounters. Another thought I had that left me when people have these encounters, whether it's Bigfoot, Dogman, sometimes they have glowing eyes, and some people say maybe that could be one of them demonically possessed by something, which makes it, I think, that a little bit extra scary because it's combining two different things.
Yeah.
Not only if
But yeah, I don't know what makes demons' eyes glow though. I mean,
I don't know either. It's just
it's like
they say it's different than just the normal eye shine, like with dogs and cats. They glow red, and that's not something
yeah.
people typically see with the eye shines.
No, it's definitely not natural. That's for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah.
But
Although some
I don't
some
know what it
birds
would be.
some birds have red eye shine, but not too many. Most of them are like that orange and yellow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Trying to see what else did I have. Not much. That was pretty much it.
Okay.
There's a lot of rabbit holes to go down.
Sure
Um,
is.
And I'm just kind of starting my journey through it, just having conversations.
That's
Um,
good. Yeah.
which is I like it. I think it's fun. Well, we've gone for an hour now. I was hoping
Yeah.
maybe hour and a half, so it's a good time.
Yeah,
But
sure.
thank you for coming and having a talk with me.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. Thanks, Alex. It was interesting from my point of view too to hear, how things are in your
Yeah, I
point of
think
view.
podcasts like this can be beneficial because it brings certain ideas forefront that might connect to somebody else and leads to more
Definitely.
more things being thought of and
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe we can get some answers someday, but who knows?
Someday. Yeah.
Um,
But it's a fun journey no matter what. Mhm.
but yeah, thank you. I hope
Sounds
you enjoy
good.
the rest of your day.
Thank you. So long.
All right, bye bye.